The Exorcism of Emily Rose is a 2005 courtroom drama and horror film directed by Scott Derrickson, who would later go on to direct hit genre films Sinister and The Black Phone. The film was written by Derrickson and Paul Harris Boardman and stars Laura Linney, Tom Wilkinson, and Jennifer Carpenter as the titular Emily Rose. I saw this film sometime around 2019 or 2020-ish and remember thinking it was actually pretty good. Maybe a 6 out of 10 or something around that range, but it didn't heavily impact me and I never watched it again. I remember thinking it was all fairly pretentious, but had decent enough of an execution that I was willing to forgive its pretty by-the-numbers story. There was something about the film, though, that even at that time I found to be strictly eye-roll-inducing. The classic based on a true story labeling. Now here we are a few years later, and though I can't expressly grasp why, I've decided to look into this alleged true story. And let me tell you, upon some research, I have garnered some thoughts. At this point in my life, I'm not one to particularly enjoy bashing films, seeing as I know how difficult their creation can be, but I want to make kind of an exception here. All of the key players behind this film should be completely ashamed of themselves. And I'm not even talking about the quality of the movie. I'm talking about the route that they chose to take with the story. Emily Rose is based upon the real life and death of one Anneliese Michel, a young girl from Germany that in the years of 1975 and 1976 was tortured, starved, and eventually killed by a combination of her family, 2 priests in their church, and a societal acceptance of complete absurdity. Anneliese was raised in an extremely religious household. She and her family were Catholics from Klingenberg, a town in Bavaria which is in southeastern Germany. This area of Germany is known for being predominantly, if not almost entirely, Catholic, something that undoubtedly played into this ultimate tragedy. Anneliese was diagnosed with epilepsy and had to be treated for psychiatric purposes on multiple occasions while she was growing up. When her medical care wasn't producing the results Anneliese or her family were hoping for, they fell under the notion that she may be demonically possessed, and thus turned to their church for help. A local priest, Father Ernst Alt, who was 40 at the time, made the declaration that she was indeed possessed. Father Arnold Renz was appointed to carry out an exorcism. He was 67. The reason I cite both of these men's ages is simply because they both absolutely should have known better and seen the eventual outcome a mile away, devoutly religious or not. Around a year before Anneliese was killed, she stopped receiving any actual treatment for her ailments. Hidden away in her family's basement, she underwent exorcism 67 times by these 2 men, all in secret. During these exorcisms, Anneliese is said to have been battling with countless different occupants. Supposedly, she was possessed by the unholy likes of Lucifer, Cain, Judas, Belial, Legion, Hitler, and Nero, among apparent others. There is audio of Anneliese from when she was suffering, though I warn you, some people might find this somewhat disturbing. So, listen at your own discretion.
Eigenen Seminaren ausgebildet, wenn die dürfen nicht auf die anderen Universitäten.
Now, what can we take away from these audio bits? To me, any reasonably functioning adult could come up with a few notes. For one thing, all of these entities sound the same aside from very minor differences. Differences that could easily be produced by someone trying to impersonate multiple different people or things. And for another thing, each of these demons are all fairly obvious choices when it comes to who someone from the general populace probably wouldn't want to be possessed by. Additionally, the reason her voice is so altered can likely be attributed to the fact that she had been screaming for months on end and was presently dying. I repeat, dying of dehydration and malnutrition. Decide for yourself, I suppose. What isn't up for personal conclusion, though, is that Anneliese eventually died of malnourishment and dehydration, weighing only 68 pounds when it was all said and done. Her mother, father, and both priests were charged with negligent homicide and underwent trial, but none experienced any true or just punishment. The priests and the Michels were given suspended prison sentences. though the prosecution had recommended a much lighter sentencing somehow. The bishop that had signed off on the exorcism in the first place was not indicted at all. So, what is to be made of this situation and this story? Was Anneliese Michel possessed by a demon or demons? Were her parents and these priests fighting to defend her soul? Was she freed from this possession in death? Should their efforts be regarded as heroic? No. The reality of the story is this. A young girl was raised in an extremely religious environment, household, and community. She was suffering from a multitude of disorders, both physical and mental, and eventually, she was killed because she did not receive the medical treatment that she needed because the people that were responsible for her safety, well-being, and happiness allowed it to happen. During and even after these court proceedings, the proclamation that she had been truly possessed was a position that many, including the two priests, chose to maintain. They claimed just before she had died that she had been freed of the demons within her. Her mother has gone on record saying that she does not regret the death of her daughter. The primary defense utilized by the church was that exorcism is entirely legal and falls under the banner of religious freedom, as people are 100% free to practice their religions and anything that they may encompass in Germany, in accordance with their constitution. So here's a question. Should people be allowed to kill their children due to their religious beliefs, even when said beliefs have verifiably no congruence with the real world around us? The suggestion that Anneliese is some kind of martyr that suffered for the betterment of others is a truly disturbing suggestion, especially when propagated by her own mother. Her body was eventually exhumed because a nun had told the family that she had had a vision that Anneliese's body was still intact, which was proof that she had been indeed possessed. And upon this exhumation, guess what? She had indeed experienced a regular level of bodily decay. Anneliese Michel, who would be 80 today, possibly married, possibly a mother or a grandmother, was not possessed. She was sick. No one in the history of humankind has ever been possessed. And anyone believes that it is a possibility is a danger to themselves and to those around them. Now, back to the film. Those behind the Exorcism of Emily Rose, that be the writers, the director, the producers, should all be ashamed of themselves. But in addition to their choice of portraying this story in the way they did being exceptionally immoral, it's also just kind of stupid. The real-life story is far more horrific than a story in which a girl is possessed by the devil when the devil does not exist. The film's choice to portray those that were responsible for Emily's death as the heroes of the story is abhorrent, and the ones that made these choices should be 100% ashamed of themselves. And should any streaming services or otherwise see this video that are harboring this film, I would urge you to take it down. It is a stylized, twisted, warped, and perverted recounting of a real-life story where a young girl with her whole life ahead of her was killed because of the meaningless fantasies of others. To my knowledge, not many people these days undergo exorcism, likely due to society hopefully moving towards a majority opinion that such a thing is absurd. But for any that may still consider it a viable option, please get real help. If you or someone you love is experiencing some kind of ailment, be that mental, physical, or otherwise, see a medical professional, a therapist, or someone that is qualified to help you. There are people that can and will help you. Don't go to your church, and for the love of all that is good in the world, please do not ever pursue something as dangerous and pointless as an exorcism.